Team, now the president has also provided new details about what happened earlier this year when the Iranian regime massacred 45,000 civilians in its own country. After that, President Trump told me that the United States sent weapons to the Iranian protesters. He told me we sent a lot of weapons through the Kurds, and the president says he thinks the Kurds kept them. He went on to say we sent weapons to the protesters, a lot of them. And so, several headlines here from my conversation with President Trump. This happened over a month ago during Operation Epic Fury. And after that successful U.S. operation overnight to rescue that American soldier held in Iranian territory. The president himself ordered this operation after the CIA came in on Saturday morning and confirmed the exact location of where that crew member from the F-15 shot down on Friday was once again. The decision to send hundreds of U.S. Special Forces into Iranian territory and rescue that American soldier.
I want to make sure I understood correctly. Are you saying that the president told you he sent weapons? No.
But good morning, everyone. I spoke with President Trump for 15 minutes. He detailed the behind-the-scenes negotiations with the Iranians and what will happen if Iran doesn't reach a good faith agreement. The president told me, if they don't make a quick deal, I'm considering blowing everything up and taking control of the oil. He continued, you'll see bridges and power plants falling all over the country. I asked about the possibility of a deal with the Iranians, and he said, those who negotiate for Iran have now been granted amnesty, so the talks can continue. The president told me he thinks he can reach a deal by tomorrow. He said, I think there's a good chance tomorrow. They're negotiating now, post-presidential. On Truth Social, where he talked about these negotiations with the Iranians, we'll show that. He said, Tuesday will be the day of the plant and the bridge, all in one. In Iran, there will be nothing like it. Open the Strait, you bastards, or you will live in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. The president posted on Truth Social about the operation and his new red line for the Iranian regime. Now, the president also provided new details about what happened earlier this year when the Iranian regime massacred what the president tells me were 45,000 civilians in their own country. Trump told me that the United States sent weapons to the Iranian protesters. He said, we sent a lot of weapons to them through the Kurds, but he thinks the Kurds kept them. The president went on to say, we sent weapons to the protesters, a lot of them. So those are several headlines from my conversation with President Trump. All of this happens more than a month after Operation Epic Fury and in the wake of the success of the Second One Night operation, which rescued the American soldiers stranded inside Iranian territory. The president ordered this operation after the CIA on Saturday morning confirmed the location of the crew member of an F-15 shot down on Friday. Once again, the president decided to send hundreds of Special Forces troops into the interior of Iranian territory and successfully rescued the soldier from the...
Let me see if I understand. So you're saying that the president said the U.S. sent weapons to the protesters through the Kurds, but the Kurds kept some of them?
Correct. The president said that the U.S. sent weapons to the Iranian protesters this year. He said, we sent a lot of weapons through the Kurds and he believes they kept them. Remember that the president made a commitment to the Iranian protesters who were on the streets earlier this year. These images were circulating online, showing thousands of people massacred at the hands of the current Iranian regime. It is attacking American forces now. The president promised the protesters on Truth Social, help is on the way. We learned from Trump's call that he tried to send weapons to protesters so they could fight back and defend themselves. Remember, they were peaceful protesters demonstrating against the government and were met with live fire from the Iranian regime in the streets. They were massacred, and Fox News was talking to people in Iran who were using Starlink, who described horrific scenes in the streets, and the president said that support and help were on the way. So, it seems that this was the action, the help the president was referring to. And now, as we look 3 months later, the president is offering the Iranians a diplomatic solution to end this conflict. The same offer made to the Iranians before Operation Epic Fury? Exactly. At the negotiating table before the operation, the Iranian regime's initial position was that they had 460 kilos of uranium enriched to 60% enough to produce 11 nuclear bombs. The president, aware of the missiles and nuclear ambitions, ordered the action. More than 35 days later, the president is offering a new diplomatic solution to the Iranians and told Fox News earlier today that he hopes to reach a deal with Iran by tomorrow. He thinks there's a good chance tomorrow. They are negotiating now, but again, the president continues, they will see bridges and power plants destroyed across the country if they don't accept a deal.
Amazing report, Trey. But it's interesting because President Trump said that he was optimistic, it seems, that there could be a deal tomorrow. But did you also notice a certain frustration in him when talking about the negotiations? Because Iran has never changed its stance. So far, they still haven't shown any sign of negotiating in good faith. But maybe something has changed over the last 24 hours.
The short answer is no. It doesn't seem like anything significant has changed in the way the Iranians are negotiating. What has changed is the continuing pressure. President Trump ordered an attack on the B-1 bridge, a new bridge in Iran, which according to American intelligence, the Iranians were going to use to transport military equipment. And he told me on the phone that while they were trying to reach a deal, the Iranians were trying to delay the negotiation schedule, saying, for example, we'll meet next Tuesday, and the president said no in the next hour, because this is a president who wanted to close a deal. He wants to get the job done, and in the end, the Iranians were trying to extend the negotiations. The president ordered the attack against this critical infrastructure in Iran, showing that the United States doesn't play around on the battlefield or at the table. De negociações. And I felt that President Trump takes these threats against the Iranian regime very seriously, given their refusal to make a good faith deal, even though the president has given them several ways out. And he tells me again that ideally he will take Iran's oil if they are not willing to make a deal. And this is a major development in this conflict. And the president made it very clear in his post on Truth Social that Iran's energy and electricity infrastructure will be targeted in the coming days if Iran doesn't make a deal tomorrow.
Based on your conversation, Trey, especially when you consider that there has been no evidence that the regime is trustworthy, they make deals all the time, they say things all the time, and they never, ever, ever follow through. Was that your impression when you listened to the president? And if that's the case, it seems like in 24 hours we'll be hearing a lot more about bombings.
Yes. The president clearly understands the agreement based on our conversation and said we're mainly discussing opening the Strait of Hormuz.
That's right.
And again, the Iranians use these small mine-laying boats to try to disrupt billions of dollars in oil trade through the Strait. It's something they can keep doing because it's very cheap for Iran, but very expensive for international energy markets. And the president understands that. And so the main thing he talked about was the Strait of Hormuz. He also said there are 15 other points, but he believes he will be able to reach an agreement with the Iranian regime. I think the important part here is also the president's negotiating team. We're talking about the U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. If you think about last year, the whole region didn't think a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas was possible. And finally, the president sent Jared Kushner to Egypt to get a deal that everyone said was impossible. And I think that's the feeling now. In the end, there will be a negotiated agreement. The president is really just giving the Iranians a chance now, so things can stop here, because the United States has more American forces in the region. The president is willing to send more troops to the Middle East if necessary, but tens of thousands of American soldiers are already in the region. And as we saw last night, the Pekerlua special forces in the hundreds have the ability to enter Iranian territory to carry out operations and leave successfully without casualties or serious injuries. And again, this is also a message of deterrence, according to sources. I spoke with a high-ranking official from Zagir Manira today who said that only Zagir Manira has the capability to do what is being done now in Iran. And the president has several options on the table. There are options on the table regarding the direction of this conflict, and as we mentioned earlier, the president has given the Iranians until tomorrow for a good faith agreement, or there will be a price to pay, as the president stated, specifically targeting Iran's power grid and bridges. He described it as the day of the power plants and the bridges. A coordinated effort to strike at the heart of the regime and its infrastructure if they don't want to come to the table and negotiate in good faith.
Well, Trey, your report gives me a lot of hope. I mean, we've all been praying for peace and hopefully for a negotiation, a way out of this. Did the president give you any indication of who is leading these negotiations? From what I understand, it was last week that the Iranians said, we want to negotiate with J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance was starting negotiations with someone on the Iranian side. And then that person we killed, I think, or injured, and then some of his family members were killed, if I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. So who is leading the negotiations and who are they negotiating with? Because part of the problem is that if you kill so many leaders, there aren't many people left to negotiate with.
I'll be discreet, but I had official and informal conversations with President Trump for about 15 minutes.
I understand.
And he told me that the current negotiators on the Iranian side have received a limited amnesty at this time. They won't kill them while these negotiations continue. And that's something the Iranians requested, and the president was willing to grant, given the fact that he's controlling the scope of these negotiations now. But I think the president also talked about how the Iranians are negotiating, and what I took from that is that they like to stall. The president, through that attack on an important bridge in Iran last week, signaled that either they make a deal or they suffer the consequences for not making one. And then again, the president told me that the Iranians were trying to delay the negotiations for another week and a few more days. And the president then said, no, you will negotiate in the next hour. Because again, this is a president who is directly involved and speaking daily with the special envoy of the former secretaries, Steve Witkoff, with his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, because they understand the structure of this agreement. They know how the Iranians negotiate and that they're not acting in good faith, even though the United States offers them a way out. We've seen this before. We've seen this in previous administrations, and the difference with this administration is that the president is not willing to let this drag on. He says, if you're going to make a deal, make it tomorrow, not next week. Time is running out. Trey Yingst, great reporting. Excellent, incredible. Thank you very much. Thank you, Trey.